Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
She really is the queen of compassionate transformation. And why would you want to make a transformation of yourself? Well, things aren't going exactly the way you want them to. And you could be doing better in all different areas, maybe relationships, work, maybe you got some stuff to heal from. She can help you out. Winnie Chan Wang joins us. How are you doing, Winnie? How's everything?
I'm so grateful that I can even be here because last week I canceled because I was testing positive for COVID.
Oh.
And I'm so grateful to be testing negative today. And I just want to open by saying 2 people are exposed to COVID. One person walks around with barely any symptoms. Another person is coughing up a storm. Yet another person has a ton of phlegm. In fact, it was so funny. I went on Facebook Live and talked about this because me and my boyfriend got COVID. He has thick phlegm, full of it. Meanwhile, I have this really dry cough with absolutely no phlegm. And mine, if anything, is completely clear. And his is like, got some yellow stuff. And it's really funny because as an acupuncturist and energy healer, I've been saying for 2 years, what is the difference between these 2 people or 3 people? Why people either get no symptoms or they get a dry cough or they get really phlegmy? And the reason is because the body keeps the score. Wow. And unfortunately, I got a rude awakening. I got a really bad report card, man. So this is how it works. In traditional Chinese medicine, which has been around for thousands of years, we say that grief is trapped into the lungs. And of course, I'm just going through a very recent divorce and also with parental alienation, where I don't really have a relationship with my children. And I'm literally crying all the time and grieving. And so when COVID hit, I was like, cuss word. I'm like, this is going to hit me hard. And indeed, it hit me really hard because grief is stored in the lungs.
Never knew that, by the way. And thank you for sharing that, because I think that's going to make all of us now think, if you're dealing with a very serious, and you could be like grieving a relationship, grieving the passing of somebody, but I didn't know it's centered in the lungs. Interesting.
Exactly. So you remember the part about me being spiritual bypassing? I'm like, oh, I'm fine. I'm over the divorce and whatever. But you know what? The body keeps the score. So when COVID hit, I got to face all the grief, because lung qi is supposed to descend. So when we take a deep breath, the breath is supposed to go down to our lower abdomen. But when we have grief in the lungs, instead of lung qi descending, we have rebellious. The qi is going upward and express. It's kind of like actually COVID is a gift because it provided me opportunity. With each cough, I can connect to the sadness in my lungs and just push it out. And so literally the whole time I was coughing up a storm, it was so violent too. My abs were hurting because the more grief you have, the more your body is like the self-cleaning oven, right? So my body is like, okay, get the grief out. And then this huge coughing fit just took over.
Do you think, Winnie, if you weren't going through that situation, that maybe your COVID symptoms would be a lot less?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm vaccinated, I'm boosted, I diet, exercise, meditate. I'm so healthy, otherwise.
Yeah.
And it was really funny because my boyfriend has a really wet cough. He had this thick mucus. And so in our traditional Chinese medicine, we said that overthinking, worrying, anxiety impairs the spleen stomach. So whereas lung, we call this the upper jiao, so up here, and then the middle jiao, the middle burner, is the stomach and the spleen. And so when we have a lot of attachments, a lot of greed, then, or a lot of thinking. I got to have things the way I want it,
Hmm.
and
I get
yeah.
it.
Okay, so if you're an overthinker, worrier, have a lot of anxiety and like anxiously attached to your relationship, man, then you're gonna make a lot of phlegm. So I was like looking at him like half the time, every time he's blowing his nose, I'm like, oh yeah, he's got some attachments. He's got some anxious attachment over there.
Does he? Do you know that he in fact does? Does he have? Yeah, yeah, okay. And it's so funny, the overthinking word. I met somebody recently, just somebody, a friend, um, overthinks, and I even said, I don't mean this in a bad way, but you really overthink everything, and that's obviously sometimes it's not good. Not easy to not overthink, but I'm all about Chinese medicine. My best friend is Chinese. His last name is Tan. Yours is Wang. We grew up together. So I always hear, but I never heard about the lungs. So that's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that.
And now I have long COVID. So for anybody who had COVID and has a lingering cough, I do briefly want to talk about what you get to do to overcome your long COVID, which is, so the lower burner is the kidney. And in traditional Chinese medicine, we said that the function of the kidney is to receive, to grasp the qi. So when we inhale, what allows us to receive the qi in the lower abdomen is a healthy functioning kidney. And by the way, this Chinese medicine kidney, you can't think about as the Western medicine kidney. It's a little bit different. So the kidney qi is healthy when there is strength, determination, trust, and support, right? So when there's a lot of fear and doubt, that impairs your kidney. So for example, if I'm thinking, oh, I don't know if I'll ever get over this cough, I'm afraid I'll never get over this cough. The more I'm afraid I'll not get over the cough, the more I will keep coughing because my organs are not receiving the qi. So I've been on Facebook and, today actually I posted this video about how my lesson right now is to learn how to receive, right? Because I want to receive my qi instead of coughing because I no longer have COVID, but my nervous system hasn't figured that out yet. So it's still like, habitually coughing. So I get to look at, each breath. Each breath, there's qi, it's sacred, it's prana, it's Holy Spirit. And why is it that I'm so afraid to take a deep breath? Why am I so afraid to breathe Holy Spirit into my body, right? Why am I so afraid to receive? And it's so funny because I then related to, oh yeah, if we're afraid to take a deep breath because we're afraid a deep breath might cause us to cough, it's just like some people are really afraid of having love. People are afraid of having relationships. People are afraid of having money. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but it's true. Some people are
No,
afraid of having money.
no, you know what? I think it comes down to, and you tell me how you feel about this, but is it we're afraid to receive because we feel guilty or we don't feel worthy?
I think that a lot of it is that we don't understand we are infinitely loved, protected, and supported by the whole universe and God. We don't trust God's plan. We think we know better than God. Yeah, it's so funny. And so the thing about having is, and I know this because I'm Chinese and in my culture, we really, Chinese people like to make $10 and put $7 in the bank. Like we really like to save every penny. Some cultures, they make a $10, they like to spend $11, but as a culture, we really like to save. And it really comes from fear because this fear of, okay, what if I broke a leg? What if I got fired? Right? There's this whole idea is not trusting that the universe will take care of me. And so I want to save because I'm afraid of whatever that's going to come.
Yep.
Right.
And
Instead
I
of,
want to share with you,
yeah,
Winnie, I went through that. I'm not obviously Chinese, but if I could change something along the way, even in the last 10 years, it was worrying about that, worrying about money. Yeah, we all have challenges, but I worried just what you said. Well, what if this happens? Why did I worry about that? The universe will take you, support you. It'll all eventually somehow work out in your favor if you have the positivity, if you embrace it. And I want to share something with you. And it's funny you use the word receive. Somebody gave me this card and I was just about to text it to my friend. I don't have it with me because it's in my car, but it is a card that says, and I don't know if you can see this right there, but it's hard to see, so I'm going to read it to you. It says,
yes.
I accept this gift or receive this gift of Reiki energy to open myself up to new possibilities and bring in the law of attraction into my life. So it's funny, we're talking about receiving something and being open to it. And I just literally, like before we went on, I'm open to receiving it. But yeah, I worried about that too, about money. And I regret it. I actually regret it.
So one of the things that I had a breakthrough yesterday that was just so phenomenal is I don't have to make money. Money is constantly coming to me. All I have to do is receive it. Not just that, but I am money. So money is inside of me and money is outside of me. I am money, and that's why I attract money. The more money I am, the more money I attract. And literally, I don't need to stress. There's no effort. The more I see that I am money, the money just keeps coming in. And this is so phenomenal because no longer am I in the space of, I got to work hard, especially, my Asian roots. I think that everything I have is by hard work, but it's actually not true. I mean, it is true 50%. Okay, 50% of the time, we do have to put in some work. But 50% of the time, it's just allowing it to come in.
I agree with you. I totally, and doing the right thing. Just if you do the right thing and by way of other people, it just works that way. I can't explain it. I don't know what it is, but it's interesting. I think the same thing, and I'm a different culture, I guess, but we're all the same. We're always interesting. You're saying that today. Yeah. And thanks for sharing that.
So I want to read an excerpt from my book. My book is called Honoring Darkness. Embrace shadow work to nourish and grow your power. Because on this whole concept of receiving, right? Our shadow, our grief. Yes, 50% we want to release the grief, but 50% we want to embrace it. We want to hold it, love it, accept it. And so I want to read this excerpt from chapter 2.1. It's about grief because right now in Los Angeles, it's like my brother has COVID, my acupuncture mentor has COVID, my real estate broker has COVID, my ex-husband has COVID. It's just every day I keep hearing a new person has COVID. And I think it's because none of us are reporting our numbers, right? Because now that we all have at-home tests, we test positive and we don't tell the authorities. So whatever numbers that we hear in the news, it's literally fake news because the real number is, I want to say 80 times. I'm just pulling a number out of my booty. 80 times bigger than whatever's reported because all of us are doing home tests and none of us are reporting.
Yep.
So
yeah. So it's a lot more worse and more infections, and it's probably that way across the country.
Yeah.
By the way, I just want to share with everybody that we're talking with the founder and healer of Mindful Healing Heart, Winnie Chan Wang is with us, and she's a energy healer, Reiki master. You can check her out at mindfulhealingheart.com.
Yeah, so I want to read this excerpt to help anyone who's out there processing grief, because that's the primary organ, lung, that is affected during COVID. And also, I have this course that guides people in doing the shadow work. But it doesn't matter if you take the course or not, because you can get the book. And even if you don't get a book, you can write a letter to yourself confronting your greatest grief. And then I'm going to show you this thing called the flip it around method, right? Because I can think that, oh, I'm a powerless victim. I got abandoned in my divorce. I'm a powerless victim because my kids don't want a relationship with me. I'm being rejected by my ex or my kids. When reality, it's I am rejecting myself, right? So I get to take ownership of how I am rejecting myself and process that. So this is the letter I wrote to myself. Hello, this is the voice of my grief. I grieve having no roots. I grieve losing a partner that I had imagined growing old with. I grieve for being silenced, violated, and raped. I grieve for broken dreams and helplessness. I grieve for feeling unloved and unsupported. I grieve being blocked and rejected. I grieve for being misunderstood and blamed. I grieve for feeling alienated from my children. I grieve for saying goodbye to my home. I grieve for the hopelessness that nothing I do is ever good enough to keep the people I love in my life. And the loneliness and isolation that I bring to myself because I don't want to let other people see me in my grief. And now we apply the flip it around method and take accountability. It is me. It is me that rejects myself. It is me that abandoned myself. It is me that didn't seek help, didn't call my parents every day, didn't build a support network by being an active giver in my community. It is me that had let my partner down. It is me that silenced myself. It is me that didn't stand up and protect myself. It is me that disconnected myself from the home of my heart. It is me that put up heart walls that blocked myself from accessing the love from my higher self. It is me that judged, shamed, and attacked myself. It is me that didn't let other people in. It is me that didn't receive the love that others are willing to give. It is me that put myself through surviving on my own. I'm so sorry for all the grief I created for myself. I'm grateful for the clarity in the emptiness of my suffering. By realizing my role in suffering, I can delete the conversations that lead to my suffering. I love me as my teacher and my student, my parent, my child, my lover, and my best friend. Love me. And now I invite all the audience, and yes, Steve, you too, to write a letter to yourself about all the grief and then share it on Instagram, hashtag, honoring darkness, hashtag greatest grief, hashtag shadow work, so that we can all witness and share this grief.
Thank you for sharing that. And it's powerful. And I'm going to tell you that I'm in a very similar situation as you. And I always say I should be journaling, and I've never done it. And it's, mistake, but that is what you're doing, is basically journaling, but confronting yourself in a letter to yourself. Really powerful. I don't know if I'm comfortable sharing on Instagram. I got to think about that. But short of that, though,
Okay, well, my email address is mindfulhealingheart@gmail.com. So you can email me if you don't want to share with the public.
Okay. And you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. Like you're in a situation, you don't know how that could potentially flip around. We don't know. We don't know the plan. But that was really powerful. That's cool stuff. What's the name of your book again?
Yeah, it's Honoring Darkness, Embrace Shadow Work to Nourish and Grow Your Power.
Wow. Good stuff. If we go to your website, can we find a link to get the book?
Yeah, my website is mindfulhealingheart.com. And in there, you can find links to my book, my course, which is absolutely amazing. Oh my God. It meets every Friday and the journey repeats. So it's open enrollment. You can join anytime. And let's see, this week we're doing a journey from anger to forgiveness. It's so amazing because if anybody has been through any kind of breakup, there's some anger involved, right?
Typically, yeah. Yeah.
And the journey from anger to forgiveness is not that trivial. And forgiveness is really liberation. It's really liberating myself to create more space. And it's funny because how we forgive one person is how we forgive everybody. So think about it. The hardest person to forgive is ourselves. And I was just thinking, wow, there are so many applications to forgiveness, I don't know if you've ever had that moment. It's like the first thing I do when I tested COVID positive, I got angry with myself. I'm like, oh my God, Winnie, like, what did you do that caused you to be in a compromised situation? Yeah.
They always say, or at least I've heard many times, that anger really comes from sadness. So even in that, when you realize that you had COVID, are you really angry or are you just sad? And I don't mean like sad. It's just like, oh, now I can't do this. I'm kind of bummed. I can't go out. I have to wait, for quarantine. And then that right away turns into anger. And the same thing with the loss of a relationship. What are you really? You're actually sad. Yeah, you're grieving, which can turn into anger along the way. And is it easy to let go of that? No, it takes a lot. It takes a lot.
So it's so funny that you mentioned that, Steve, because I think anger is very easy to access for men because culturally it's acceptable for men to feel anger, whereas culturally sometimes we don't think men should cry, So a lot of the times for men especially, easy to detect is anger. And that's why the anger could be easy to acknowledge, but the sadness is harder. Mm-hmm. Whereas for me, it's actually the reverse, believe it or not, because I've had this Asian upbringing and I'm an immigrant and I was raised to be a submissive Asian girl who's sweet and smile and never get angry, never challenge authority. And it's fine for me to cry tears and tears and tears. So sadness is very easy for me to access. And I can cry 3 times a day, just like brushing teeth. But for me to get angry is rare. It's hard. So how interesting is that you and I perhaps
I'm seeing it one way, you're seeing it the other way.
Yeah.
When you say angry, do you mean outwardly angry, like I'm mad at that person? Or is it just you're keeping the anger inside? Culturally, you can't display it. And I don't either. It's you'll catch me crying. It's okay. I admit it. I'm a little bit different, I think, than a typical guy, but what's typical. But do you think that, there's anger there with you? I don't mean now, but, along the way, but you just don't display it because of your culture.
I think I definitely have the same level of anger as everybody else, but I was taught to suppress it, silence it, and deny it so that I don't know. It's not that I'm trying, like now, as a 42-year-old grown ass woman, I'm allowed to express my anger, but unfortunately, it's so deep that sometimes I'm angry and I don't even know it.
Mm, yeah, it's something, but you can't put your finger on it because you've grew up having to suppress it. And that's just that there's nothing wrong with that. That's just the way you grew up, and everybody grows up a different way.
Exactly. That's why I wrote this book, because I wanted to create a systematic approach to identifying all the shadows, right? So grief might be very easy for me to express, but anger is more difficult. And the beauty of this course that I'm creating is when everybody comes together, right? When you put a Winnie together and you put a Steve together, all of a sudden, it's like we can share our experiences and learn from each other. And by having a syllabus and a systematic approach, you get to systematically look at all of your shadows.
I love it. It's interesting. We talk about mindful, like your website is mindfulhealingheart.com. I don't think we could get any more mindful than we did today, Winnie. It's like super deep, but like great things that we just talked about that people don't talk about because they hide it or they don't know how to express it or even how to deal with it. And that's where you come in. If you are dealing with, sadness, anger, whatever it might be, reach out to Winnie. Go to the website, mindfulhealingheart.com. We're out of time. I have just one quick question. Your book, did you write that before your personal situation that we're talking about, or did it start there and you finished it after it? What's the timeline?
Yeah, so I had my divorce in March of 2021. And then I was at my lowest point in June, and I got this idea that I can write a book because, I've been doing a lot of shadow work already at that point. But writing this book, I did more shadow work than ever. And getting COVID, I do more shadow work. Basically, I'm the embodiment. I live and breathe and do shadow work every day.
Love it. And what you just said when you said the lowest point, I've been there, done that. You could be there tomorrow. We don't know. Nothing's guaranteed. But somebody said to me, and this was 15 years ago, and I still remember it. He said, when you're at your lowest point, that's when you're most humble.
Yes, yes, yes.
So and that's why I think that book came out of you at that point, because there you were. And it was waiting to come out, but congrats on that. Winnie, great talking with you today. Love it.
Same. Thank you to all the listeners, and really encourage all of you to write a letter confronting all of your grief before you get COVID.
Yeah, definitely. And wash your hands, everybody. And
Yes.
You're not alone. You're not alone. Winnie's there. She's available. Trust yourself. And you used that word before, but I don't think we trust ourselves or trust the universe. But it's an important thing. Thanks again. I look forward to getting together sometime soon with you.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.